It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I had the privilege to interview the Augustana Vikings head softball coach, Coach Gretta Melsted. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you, Brandon?
I'm doing good. Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to get started in coaching in college softball?
Yeah, my path might be somewhat normal for most coaches, but it's also a little bit different at the same time. I always knew I wanted to be a teacher and coach, but I started my career off at the high school level with a goal of always trying to get to the college level. But when I started my career, I really wanted to be a college basketball coach. That was my focus. And so I did make the jump after 3 years of coaching high school, both basketball and softball, to college sports. And I did a graduate assistant at William Woods University, but that GA was in basketball. Because again, at that time, I still wanted to be a college basketball coach. So I coached, I did my GA. And while I was at William Woods, I was really lucky that the softball coach, Tracy Gassnew, let me just volunteer and help out. Even though she already had a GA, I just got to help after I was done with basketball season. So I stayed coaching softball. I got my first head coaching experience actually as a softball coach, even though I still wanted to be a basketball coach. I was a head softball coach at Culver Stockton, an assistant women's basketball coach. And still at that time, I really thought I was going to be a college basketball coach. I had some opportunities to be a head college basketball coach, but it wasn't in a location I really wanted to be. And I ended up after a while thinking, you know what, I think maybe softball really is where I'm supposed to be. And I was fortunate enough to get the Augustana job many years ago, more back home. I'm from Minnesota, so this was getting closer to home. And softball's been my route ever since. And I will admit, I'm extremely grateful, and I'm glad I'm not a college basketball coach.
Of course, as a collegiate athlete, what was that like getting to play two sports, college basketball and softball?
I feel very fortunate to have been able to do that, because nowadays that's extremely difficult to do. Now, I also was a Division III college athlete, so it's a little more it's a little more or a little easier to do that at that level. And during the times that I was going to school in the 1990s, so it was a little bit different, and you could balance both of those two things. And it was just really special. It was fun to be able to be part of two programs and be able to play the two sports that I really loved.
What was that feeling like, honestly, getting to put on two jerseys, one for the softball team and one for the basketball team.
And I was fortunate enough to be actually able to be the captain of both of those teams, which was really special. It's just fun to be able to represent my institution, which was Carleton, which is a whole different thing because Carleton really is not known for athletics. It's a big academic school. But I just proud to be able to represent them and be able to wear the maize and blue, and it's pretty funny that I pretty much wear navy and blue still to this day. So,
Of course, while at Carleton, what were some of your biggest playing accomplishments?
I would say, it's interesting because when I was a college athlete, we actually didn't win nearly as much as we win now, with some of the teams that I have. So wins were a little bit more few and far between, and I think the biggest accomplishments were just, you know, if we won a game against St. Olaf, if we, just having fun with our teammates and things like that. So those were probably the biggest accomplishment, is just being able to actually play two sports all the way through.
Of course, after college, what was it like getting into coaching and coaching both the softball and women's basketball for William Wood?
It was always my dream to get into college coaching. And again, I jumped from being a high school coach, and when I coached at the high school level, I actually had the privilege, an opportunity to coach boys basketball. And so that was a lot of fun. Because especially at that time, there were not a lot of women who were coaching boys sports, especially basketball. So I was able to take all the experiences that I had coaching high school, whether it was, like I said, coaching boys basketball or coaching softball. And I was really fortunate that I was a part of a really, really good high school softball team. I coached at Robinson Armstrong High School. We had just some phenomenal athletes. We had a shortstop who played Division I, went on to play Division I basketball. I had a center fielder who was Miss Minnesota basketball. She went on to play basketball at Iowa. I had a pitcher who went on to pitch at Penn State University, just one of the best pitchers to come out of the state of Minnesota. So I was really fortunate because I was a young assistant coach, and I got to learn under the head coach and the other assistant coach, and that helped with my transition to William Woods at the college level and being able to coach two sports there. And just again, it's part of a whole learning process. I got to work under Missy Brooks at William Woods for basketball, and just a great coach to learn under. And I got to learn under Tracy Gasnew. So before I became a head coach, I literally worked under at least 7 head coaches. So I was able to kind of learn a lot from them and be able to mold that into who I am now.
Of course, what was that transition like from going from coaching on the high school level to then coaching on the collegiate level?
There is a transition with that, and it took me a little while to get used to it. Besides just the playing level being higher, of course, and you get better athletes, I think it's also seeing the changes in athletes at the high school level. You can see an immediate impact that you make on athletes right away. At the college level, sometimes it takes 2 years, sometimes it takes 3, 4, sometimes it might take until, they come back after they've graduated 5 years down the line to tell you kind of what impact you've made on them. So I think that was a big transition for me, is trying to figure out, what am I really making a difference on these college athletes, or is high school where I'm supposed to be? So I kind of wrestled with that just until I got used to what it's like to work with college athletes, because again, the process is a lot longer with college athletes than high school.
How was it like getting your first head coaching job as a softball coach for Carver Stock?
You know, getting that opportunity, and that was special. And again, for me, it was the ability to continue to be coaching basketball because I was the assistant women's basketball coach. I was the head softball coach. Then I also taught in their PE department too. And that, when you get your first head coaching job, that's always special. And I was able to work 3 years at Kohler before I came to my home, Augustana.
Of course, during that time, what was that like getting to coach the softball team, but then also being a PE coach and a teacher?
You know, when I look back at it now, I say, how did I do it? Um, the good thing was I was young. I was young back then, so it seemed normal to be able to run to basketball practice in one day, and then also run to softball practice, and then maybe have to run and go on the road recruiting, and then I also taught a class that day too. So it was very, very busy. I remember some days where I had, like I said, a practice at maybe 5 or 6 a.m. for the softball team, and was down in St. Louis recruiting later on that night, and then back home by 1 a.m. again. And so you're kind of burning the candle at both ends. And so now that I have been doing this for, gosh, I've been in coaching for 26 years. I look at it and I probably don't have the energy to do that anymore. But that's kind of how we all learn. And I'm really grateful for those experiences.
Of course, what were some of the things that you learned as your first head coach to then take over to Augustine when you became their head coach?
Yeah, I think when you first become a head coach, you're really trying to figure out who you are as a head coach. Because again, I worked under 7 really very good head coaches in multiple sports, and all very, very different from each other. So you're trying to figure out who you are, and you're kind of trying to take all these things from all these mentors that you've worked with. And you have to kind of figure out who you are. And once you figure out who you are as a coach, and you have to remember, you cannot be someone else. You can't be your mentor. You have to be you. And it takes a little while to figure that out. And sometimes I kind of feel bad for some of the kids who probably played for me those first couple of years. Because I was a bear probably, I was trying to be, one of my mentors, and you really have to be yourself. And then once you figure that out, then things go a heck of a lot smoother. But it's really exciting to get that opportunity. Then you start looking and seeing all the things that head coaches have to do that you don't realize that head coaches have to do when you're an assistant coach. And you often wonder, well, why aren't they doing this, or why aren't they noticing this? Well, because their mind is on all kinds of other things. So you get a different lens when you're a head coach than when you're an assistant coach. So again, I think it always takes anyone a little while to get used to being a head coach, and then going from there.
Of course, what was that feeling like for you to get that call to become the next head coach at Augustine and getting announced to become the next head coach in your press conference?
Becoming the Augustana head coach it really wasn't something I was looking for, but it's the right and the perfect fit. When that opportunity came about, I knew this was going to be a good place for me. And Augustana is a small private liberal arts school, and I went to a small liberal private arts school. This is a Lutheran institution. I'm a Lutheran pastor's kid. I grew up in the Lutheran faith and the Lutheran heritage. So, you couldn't have found a more perfect fit for me, for my values. One thing that was interesting is Augustana is Division II. I had never coached at the Division II level. I'd been at high school, I'd been at D3, and I'd been at NAIA. So I had to get used to a whole nother level because it is a jump up. It probably took me about a year to kind of figure out what type of players I really needed at Augustana to be successful. But I don't know. There was something about when I was here that I just knew that this was the right place. And 18 years later, it still is the right place.
Of course, as a coach, what was that transition like, as you said, from going from Division 3 to then Division 2?
Again, that jump from D3 NAI to Division 2, um, I was lucky I had experience with dealing with scholarships and things like that from being in the NAI world, but you have to really learn, and it took me going through a whole season before I figured out the level and the caliber of student athlete that I needed to be successful here. I know sometimes I could see a kid out on the recruiting trail and I would think, hey, that kid's could be really, really good. And then not knowing, what, I need to have a higher level athlete to be successful here. So it just took a little bit of time. And then once I figured it out, then we've been trying to cruise ever since.
Of course, what was that feeling the first time you got to step onto the softball field as the head coach?
Um, you know, I I think it's gratitude, gratitude that you get that opportunity to be the caretaker of this program. Because for me, Augustana, I took over a program that is just steeped in tradition. I mean, head coach Sandy Jersted is a Hall of Famer. She was here for 27 years. She won 1,011 games. And there was one person in between Sandy and myself. That was Jenny Hill, and she was a four-time All-American here. And she had a very successful 3 years. So taking over a program that has so much tradition, it's an honor and it's a privilege, and I'm very grateful that Augustana entrusted me with that opportunity.
Of course, as the head coach, what has that been like filling the shoes of the Hall of Famer and your previous predecessor?
You know, um, I think the first couple of years, first 1, 2, or 3 years, that's when you feel it the most because you're trying to like figure out how things work. You're trying to kind of, you don't want to screw up. You don't want to ruin things or anything like that because when you look at this program, there's really only been I think it's 3 losing seasons since 1975. So 1975, that's like 48 years ago or so. Um, Now one of those losing seasons, a couple of those losing seasons are on my watch. So that at the very beginning, so that might have been a little intimidating at first, but once you get into the groove, now it's now it's now it's about just being the caretaker of this great program, this great tradition. And my players, we talk a lot about, we play for the people who came before us, and we play for the people who are going to come after us. This is not about just one team. This is about a program, and it's so much bigger than just one person, so much bigger than one player or one coach, or one anything. It's about a program, and it's about a long-standing tradition of excellence.
What does a typical game day look like for you as a head coach versus for your players?
It's probably a little different, and it's going to depend on if it's a weekday or a weekend. In the middle of the week, our players are going to class, and they're having a normal day until they have to get to the hitting building to start warming up. So for them, it's same old, and until game day. For me, it's just kind of getting things all ready, making sure our game plan is all set, and I have a tradition in the middle of the week. I always take my staff out for lunch. So that always has to happen if it's a middle of the week home game. So we go out for lunch, and then we go to warm-ups and things like that. If it's the weekend, then it's totally different. Then it's, our players are having breakfast with their families and things like that, and spending a little bit of time with them before they come to warm-ups. And you know what? I'm doing the same thing. I'm home with my own kids and husband, and spending time with them before we hit warm-ups. And then as soon as we hit warm-ups, it's go time, and it's getting ready to go.
Of course, what are some of your game day routines and rituals like before game day?
Some of our game day routines or some of our stuff during the week.
What are some of your rituals that you do as a head coach to prepare before game day?
Things that we do is we watch a lot of film. Um, we like to scout our opponents and make sure that we know exactly what we're going to be seeing and know exactly what their pitcher is going to be like, and take a look at their hitters and develop a game plan there. Um, so we spend a lot of time doing that, and then we spend a lot of time prepping our players to be ready for it too. Um, and then it's just getting ready for that plan, and then it's go time on game day.
Who are some of the teams that you face in your conference each week?
We have a pretty large conference in the Northern Sun, but some of those schools and some of our biggest rivals would be Winona State and Minnesota State University. Mankato would be another school. We have University of Minnesota Duluth, St. Paul. There are 15 schools in the NSIC.
Of course, what is that home game atmosphere like when teams like Minnesota Duluth comes versus going to Cato and playing them?
You know, the home atmosphere for us is huge. And I don't know how many people know this, but 2 seasons ago, um, we lost one game at home, and that was at the very, very end of the season. I think it was the second to the last game. We had the longest win streak of any division for home games. So that includes 1, 2, and 3 for NCAA. We had the longest home winning streak. We hadn't lost since April of 2019 at home. So for us, our home atmosphere and our home advantage is really big for us, especially now we have a newly renovated field, beautiful stadium, absolutely gorgeous. It's a great place for us to play, a great place for opponents to play, a great place for fans to come and see a good game. So it just provides just a phenomenal experience for both players and fans alike.
Of course, during that time, what was that like, obviously having that hot streak of being able to win at home since 2019?
Having that streak, it's my players have a phrase, and it's called protect Bowden, or protect Bodie, they like to say. And that's they don't want anyone coming into their home field and pushing them around or winning. So we take that pretty seriously, and try to do our best to play well for our home crowd.
Of course, in 2012, what was that experience like getting to take the team to the first NCAA tournament since 1998?
Well, it was the first time that I had had a team that had made it to the World Series or national championship. And it was so special. It was amazing. I think that year we won like 50 or 53 games. And we won the super regional on our home field. And the year before we were really, really good. And we were 1 out away from making it, and then ended up losing and not making it. And that was crushing. So in 2012, to be able to actually to win the super region on our home field and be able to go, we went to Louisville, Kentucky. It was a festival year for Division II, so there were all kinds of other championships going on. And I'll never forget when our players walked on the field, the fans that were there, the parents that were there, they were so excited. They were making so much noise. I was really glad I had my shades on, because the excitement and the warm reception that we got from those parents, I was tearing up underneath my shades. So I was glad I had my shades on, because stepping onto that field, it was a magical moment. And an emotional moment. And it wasn't emotional for just me, but it was emotional, I think, for the players, and it was emotional for the rest of the coaching staff.
Of course, what was that feeling like getting to go play in the postseason and getting to be on that big of a stage?
It's hard to describe it. It's pretty amazing when you make it that far, because so very few teams get that opportunity. And it almost feels like a once in a lifetime experience. Now, I'm lucky now that I've been able to do that 3 times since we've been here. but it's just so special, and it's different. It's a different type of special with each group that I've had that opportunity to do it. Um, all their hard work, all their dedication, everything they've done for the whole year, it culminates in this opportunity. Um, and it's just the excitement around it is amazing.
Of course, in 2014, what was that experience like getting to compete for that national championship?
Well, 2019 is when we competed for the national championship. 2014, we lost in a super regional, um, uh, which was tough to take. In 2015, we lost in a super regional. So then when we made it back, in 2019, when we won the super regional, and made it to the national championship, was again, it was amazing because there were a lot of really, really good teams in 2019. We had to knock off Winona State, which was one of the better teams in the country. They went undefeated in conference play, which is unheard of. So that means, I mean, they came into our place and beat us twice. That was our win streak started right after we lost to them. Um, and so we had to knock them off at their home place, and then we had to go down to University of Central Oklahoma, the number one rated team in the country at the time, and we had to play them in a super regional on their home turf. And we 8-run ruled them in the first game, and we almost 8-run ruled them in the second. They came back a little bit, and um, it was just phenomenal games and just so much fun. And then just being able to go to national championship again was that's how it's a hard feeling to describe.
Of course, during those times, what was that like getting to compete against the best of the best in Division Two?
Getting to compete against the best of the best is why you do it. It's why you play the game. You don't play the game to go and play the worst teams around. You want that intense game. You want the game that just feels like, you know, at any minute, like something could happen, or all the pressure, the excitement, the high level of intensity. That's why you play the game. And so when you get the chance to play the best of the best, um, that's what makes it fun. Um,
Of course, following that big run to the tournament, what are some of the things that you've done afterwards to prepare you to go back to the tournament?
when we made that big run in 2019 and then won the national championship, some of the things that we've been doing to try to get back to that is you got to make sure that you are recruiting the right student athlete. You have to have, of course, you got to have talent, but for us, it's much more than just talent. It's about having the right individual in our program. It's about having the right character. It's about having someone who's going to buy into our culture. It's about having someone who wants to be a part of something bigger than themselves. So it's really about finding that right fit. And we were fortunate enough in 2021 to go back. 20, let's see, 2022, we lost in a regional championship. That was tough because I think that team could have won the whole thing again. But it's really about finding the right fit for this program.
Can you talk about, of course, the culture that you built and that championship culture that you continue to build?
Yeah, for us, everyone talks about culture. But for us, it's something that we take an immense amount of pride in. It's about who we are. Again, it's about the people who came before us and the people who are going to come after us. It's about a standard of excellence. It's about playing for each other. It's not about playing for yourself. It's playing for the person next to you, and wanting them to succeed more than you wanting yourself to succeed. Um, it's about having lifelong friendships. It's about accountability. It's about learning how to grow up from 18 to 22 for our players in a supportive environment. Um, One that helps empower young women. That's really what our culture is about. And so that's what we're trying to do here. We just use softball as the tool, but we're just trying to uh, create empowered young women who are going to go make a difference in whatever career they choose.
What does that recruitment process look like for those prospective student athletes, and what do you look at in those prospective student athletes?
The recruitment process is, I never want to put it in a box. There's never just one way. There are so many different ways to get recruited. Of course, there's like the connections that we might have to certain teams or certain travel ball coaches, or, we've had, kids that have sent us things that, have caught our eye, and that happens too. Recommendations from people. I mean, there's so many different ways to be recruited, but for us, it's about again finding that talented player, but they have to have all those other things too, and they have to be a really good student, and they, you know, um, we want parents who are going to be supportive too. It's about looking at a whole big huge thing instead of just one aspect.
What does that official visit look like for those softball players looking to come to Augustine?
We're probably a little bit more laid back than most people with their official visits, and we just want them to see who we really are. And they do a normal campus visit just like any other student or student athlete. They come to campus, they meet with a professor, they meet with the admissions counselor, they meet with financial aid, they do a campus tour, they do all those things. Um, they spend time with our coaching staff, but really beyond that, they need to spend time with the players, because that's who they're really going to be around the most, and that's who they're really going to end up being as lifelong friends. So we have them spend a lot of time with our players.
As a head coach, what is it like seeing those freshmen put on that uniform for the first time versus your seniors putting it on for the last time?
You know, they're both special in different ways. The first part is someone getting that opportunity to just they've worked for that for so long, and to be a part of a college program, and then they get to come out on game day and put that jersey on, and it's really a special thing. And then for our seniors, that's tough, because that's where you're like pulling at heartstrings, and you're dealing with a lot of emotions, because you've watched these players grow for years upon years, not just as softball players, but really, and most importantly, as people. And so you just for me, a lot of times when I look at those seniors, I almost see like a slideshow of their whole career, of what they were like when they came in, and how they changed the next year, and how they change, and how until who they've become at this point. So it's just really obviously different ends of the spectrum, and just fun to be able to be a part of that.
As a head coach, what is it like seeing those seniors go on and playing in professional softball or even getting into coaching?
For me, we don't tend to send very many players professional, but we put a lot of people into the coaching ranks, and Augustana has for a long time. It was, when Sandy was the coach here, for a long time, Augustana has always produced a lot of coaches, and that is an immense sense of pride, because to me that shows that these players want to give back, and that they had a good experience, and they want to be able to give those experience to the next generation and the next group of girls or young women. And so it's fun to watch them go out, and we have a lot of players that coach during the summer, and then, like I said, go on, and our high school coaches or travel ball coaches, or and we have plenty in the college ranks too.
Of course, so what is that like, obviously getting to see those players go on and achieve great things outside of collegiate softball?
Um, you know, I, you hope that you help them just a little bit get there to become who they were. And whether that's a coach, and it's funny that you talk about that, because I literally got a text message today from one of my former players who was getting ready to go into a state tournament, asking for some advice or some words of wisdom as she gets ready to compete. And you just hope that you've been able to be a part of a positive part of their life, and that you've helped them grow and become good people. And you always want to be able to help them at any point in life, whether it's about coaching or whether it's about life in general. But it's an immense sense of pride when you see them go on and do what they wanted to do, or do great things. It's not any different than, I'm a parent. I have two kids, and it's the same feeling that you have when your kids go on and do things too. Um, it's a really proud moment.
What are some of your future plans for the softball program moving forward?
I think the hope is always to make it to the NCAA tournament. That is always our goal. Get there and then see what happens. You always have to you got to have talent. You have to have chemistry. You also have to have a little bit of luck. The ball has to bounce your way. You can have some just unbelievably phenomenal teams, and the ball might not have bounced your way that weekend or that day. So that is our goal, is to always be putting ourselves in that position to make it back to the national championship.
What advice would you give those freshmen entering their first year of collegiate softball?
I probably several things. Number one, I would say you need to give yourself some grace. Um, Everyone who comes and plays college softball was the best high school athlete, the best on their team, and things like that. And so now you're on a team full of all-stars, and it's going to take a little while. It's going to be a learning process, and that's okay. Um, it's okay not to start. It's okay to be a role player. It's okay to learn. Um, so I would say to have some grace with yourself. Make sure you're a great teammate, because that's what really matters, is that you're a great teammate, and enjoy every moment that you can, because your 4 years is going to fly by.
Of course, what advice would you give those players that are looking to play professionally, whether it's Athletes Unlimited, the U.S. route, or overseas?
Go after it. Follow your dreams. Go for it. Work hard and go for it.
What advice would you give those softball players looking to transition from being collegiate softball to getting into coaching?
I would say coaching is extremely rewarding. It's not an easy profession by any means. One minute, you're getting stepped on, and 1 minute you're the hero. But I would say it's extremely, extremely rewarding to watch your players develop into who that they are going to become as adults. And I would say, don't rush into being a head coach. Take your time and learn. Learn from other people. Learn who you want to be, and then become a head coach. And it's okay when you're a head coach to not have all the answers. None of us do. It's okay. But just keep learning and just doing the best job that you can.
What advice would you give those assistant coaches looking to make that jump to become a head coach?
I would say learn as much as you possibly can from the head coach, both X's and O's wise and behind the scenes. Because a lot of times as a head coach, we spend a lot of times doing administrative things. And then I'd also ask, what do you really, really want? To make sure you want to be a head coach. Because if you just want to really coach and always be around the athletes and be working with athletes, then be an assistant coach, and be an assistant coach for life, and love it. Because being a head coach, you get that component, but you're also dealing with the scheduling. You're dealing with hotels. You're dealing with all the administrative stuff. You're dealing with across campus issues and things like that. So if that's not what you want to do, be a great assistant your whole career. If you want to have both, then being a head coach, then be a head coach.
What advice would you give those future head coaches looking to build their own program and build their own legacy?
I think you got to find out who you are as a head coach. I think that's one of the biggest things. Find out who you are. Don't try to be your mentor. Don't try to be someone who you're not. Just be yourself. And it's going to take a lot of hard work, but you can get there. And just remember, it's about building. It's about building young people.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you at on social media?
Is what it's about. It's not just about winning. Winning is a byproduct for human beings.
Where can my listeners find you at on social media?
Well, that one would be tough because I am not a social media person. It's always kind of, I don't have Facebook. So it'd be hard to find me on that, but you can find and follow Augie Softball on Twitter and on Facebook and Instagram. So that would probably be the closest to being able to follow me, would be the Augie Softball Twitter.
Thank you again, Coach Gretta Melsted, for your interview, and best luck in your future with the Augustana Vikings as the head softball coach.
Thank you so much, Brandon. I really appreciate you having me on today.
Thank you. You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Coach Gretchen, for your interview, and best luck in your future.
Thank you.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.